First talk to our times. Echoes of Rome. St. Augustine of Hippo was in a sense the agent, unwillingly no doubt, of so much that one might argue was so problematic with the world we live in. So much so that it's sometimes difficult to forgive the man. Oh, he was a man of his times, writer of one of the greatest autobiographies in all of the ancient world. A man then who lived through the sacking of Rome of 410, who was killed in the Vandal siege of Hippo in the 450s. A man then who was there at the time as empires fell, as barbarians raided lands. A man like Gildas, who had lived through that moment when the Romans pulled back from Britain. A man who lived through the age of Arthur, or the beginning of it. And what did he write about? He wrote about his love for his mum, his dalliances with strange oriental creeds, his almost love of Zoroastrianism, his Neoplatonicism, and ultimately his redemption. This book by itself, I suspect, would not be of the curse of the world. It might be annoying. Sometimes it's a little infuriating. As a rule, if I want my redemption literature from ancient Rome, I'm afraid I go to the Golden Ass. If you've never read the Golden Ass and you have a strong stomach and a love of macabre toilet humour, do go and read it. But that is also a similar story of redemption and Orphic mystery. No, what was Augustine's real bane to the modern world was, faced with the fall of Rome, how did he respond? He sanctified the idea of a world beyond the world of men. He took then and imposed a basic dualism, akin to the dualism of the Zoroastrians and the Manichaeists, who derided matter and glorified the spirit, as they called it. And St. Augustine imposes that division on Christianity. The division might have existed beforehand. It probably did in some form or other. But St. Augustine makes it absolute orthodoxy. An orthodoxy that will stick for 1,000 years or more. The world of flesh was evil. It was full of sin. It was the kingdom of men, and to be contrasted with God's pure, unearthly kingdom. A kingdom that was always at perpetual war with the kingdom of flesh. A war that it would one day win, even though that war would take aeons and all of God's purposes to work out. St. Augustine effectively then created a redoubt for any prejudice, any assumptions that the sanctimonious would ever have about humanity. Once you were one of the elect, you were God's troopers on the world. You could do no wrong. And this basic dualism is, of course, a dualism that infuses all fundamentalist Christian sects all the way down to our day. All that I'm better than youism. All that we're somehow special because we belong to the church. All that I'm going to be taken up to heaven tomorrow. Which didn't happen again, did it? All that personal redemption because I know that I am good. Ultimately, it comes from St. Augustine. And this book he writes on the two cities to explain the fall of Rome. Perhaps it was not his fault then that the millionaires behind Palantir know more about Christianity through St. Augustine's eyes than they ever did through Christ. For they are following in their surveillance technology, in their glorification of their own morality, in their assumption that they have the right to monitor us all and dictate what we should believe, what we must believe, that if we differ from them, Somehow we are fallen, and somehow we are evil, somehow we are suspect, somehow we are already terrorists. All that surely comes from St. Augustine, a man who took religion and used it to divide up the world between those that are blessed and those that are damned. And those that are damned need careful monitoring. There needs to be perpetual worrying about them. This then is the world we live in. It would be unthinkable without the history of the two cities and all it gave us. St. Augustine, by dividing up the world, created the world we live in. A world where all too easy, one individual, a powerful man in a powerful situation, be he the Bishop of Hippo, a monk with a fine power of oratory, or just some tech bro, feels that somehow they can have a vision, they can feel their religious heart, and feeding that heart, they know that they have truth, and that truth matters. They transfigure it then into a world of oughts, a world where you can suppress difference, not allow for others, where you can have your own beliefs be the ones that all must dance to, and demand that others accept. All that deep divisive legacy on Western Christianity, on Western civilization that has always felt itself to be amongst the elect, with all the imperialistic urges that follow. All of that. One should lay, I suppose, at poor old St. Augustine's door. He might have been writing a book to explain why Rome fell under Christianity and never under paganism. But we have been cursed by the effects of that book, all the more so when the world feels unsafe and insecure. And so there is doubt anywhere, everywhere. The modern St. Augustines rise, preaching their doctrines of a limited redemption. A redemption that then justifies their power and their lies. Lies that only work because we're used to hearing them in our ears. Because those are the lies of imperialism. Those are the lies that we have been telling ourselves for 1,600 years or more. I might forgive St. Augustine then, his own life. He was a difficult, clever man, living in difficult, clever times. But that does not mean we need to ape him all this time later, as our world teeters and totters. God help us and save us from Neo St. Augustines at such an hour.